You know, when somebody at Pimax had the idea of let's take the most outstanding feature, the amazing resolution and display of the Pimax crystal, and put it into a mid-priced PC VR headset that's more accessible to more simmers, well, it was a great idea, and I must say they've implemented it very well indeed.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Simhanger. My name is Mark, and this is my review of the Pimax Crystal Lite VR headset. The Pimax Crystal Lite is a mid-priced VR headset offering the high end in terms of visual display and resolution. My voice is still a little bit broken, so please bear with me.
Before we take the Pimax Crystal Lite for a test drive, I just wanted to mention one thing. I'm currently at the main menu screen in Microsoft Flight Simulator. Here we've got a full color display in front of us with both large and small writing, as well as surrounding that is this grid made up of both small and large boxes. And this is a great place for you to just check out your VR headset for any anomalies or any distortions or that sort of thing. You can also use it to check out any chromatic aberration and so on by simply moving your head slowly down and up, and of course left to right. It doesn't only apply to the Pimax Crystal Lite, of course, it applies to any VR headset, and it's a great place to do some initial checks, examine the extent of the FOV and so on. Just thought I'd mention it. Well, let's now take the Pimax Crystal Lite out and see how it does. Today we're in the Italian jet trainer, the MB339, and we're currently just flying over Manhattan Island. Let's just jump into the cockpit. And one of the things you'll notice in the Pimax Crystal Lite right from the get-go is the incredible visuals and clarity of the display, including all the small writing, gauges, lights. Absolutely everything truly is crystal clear. But that should be no surprise, as this scaled down version of the Pimax Crystal has inherited the same lenses, same resolution, same displays as the Pimax Crystal itself at 2880 by 2880 pixels per eye, or 35 pixels per degree. Now the version that I'm using today is the $899 version, the one that comes with backlighting, mini LEDs that enhance both the color vibrancy overall as well as make your black as black. And it also comes with controllers. There's also a version available for $799, which is with local dimming, the backlighting as it were, but without controllers. And for flight simmers out there, that is probably the one I would recommend as best bang for your buck. The Pimax Crystal is also lighter than the Pimax itself, because somebody at Pimax had the grand idea of simply let's take away all the bells and whistles and let's just leave a high resolution, high grade display with a rock solid PC VR headset. And that, I'm very pleased to say, is exactly what Pimax have done, and done very successfully indeed. It is considerably lighter because it doesn't have the XR2 chip, the battery, the motors that would run the eye tracking, the fans, and all the other paraphernalia. And based on my tests, it's now coming in just under, I beg your pardon, just over 900 grams, which is about 300 grams or 25% less heavy than the Pimax Crystal itself. Now that may not sound like a lot, but when you put it on, you'll be surprised at the difference that it makes. Now, I have the Pimax crystal, and I like the Pimax crystal, but I did have a criticism, and that criticism was the weight. It was just that little bit too heavy for me for any long sessions. Well, I'm pleased to say that that is genuinely not the case for the Pimax Crystal Light. That difference in weight has made all the difference indeed. Now, the longest session I've probably had is only about an hour 20 minutes so far, but at the end of that session I felt like I could have carried on flying for some considerable time. What a beautiful view. So gone are the batteries and other paraphernalia, and we've got much improved comfort. Let's head back to Manhattan, I think. But the lenses are exactly the same lenses. The QLED glass aspheric lenses with a large sweet spot, which means you don't have trouble dialing in. When you put the headset on, you can just get straight into the headset and away you go. Now, it does offer a fixed foveated rendering. There's no eye tracking, but it does have fixed foveated rendering for those that need to enhance their performance to any degree. And for those not in the know, what that means is the center of the display is at the highest resolution, and then the resolution is decreased the more you move the image towards the periphery of your vision. This puts less load on the system, obviously, and improves performance. I've got a relatively hefty CPU and a 4090 GPU. I'm not using the fixed foveated rendering, but it is there if you need it. You can also dial down the resolution within the headset. I'm currently operating at maximum, which is the 2880 by 2880, but you can dial that down to something like 2160 by 2160 if you wanted to, and that would mean that if your current hardware setup is capable of running, let's say, the HP Reverb G2, which has that 2160 by 2160 resolution, well, you'll be able to run the Pimax Crystal Light at least that resolution. However, it's not using Fresnel lenses like the HP Reverb, so even at the same resolution you're going to get a bigger FOV, you're going to get a much brighter, clearer display and able to see far more detail. This is fantastic, really is just beautiful. It does have pass-through. The tracking, by the way, is absolutely excellent. I found absolutely no problems with the tracking at all. Because I'm in Microsoft Flight Simulator, I'm not really bothered about the controllers. I don't use them. The implementation of the controllers is very clunky anyway. In fact, I don't know any people flying in Microsoft Flight Simulator that use the controllers on a regular basis. They're just not needed. The tracking is excellent. The pass-through is black and white and at low resolution. So any hopes and aspirations towards using this for mixed reality, well, currently that is not the possibility. It's just not available or practical. But if you're looking for a rock-solid PC VR, meaning you're tethered via DisplayPort and USB 3 port to the PC, well, this will give you a fantastic performance and amazing visuals. You'll notice the sound that I'm using here. This is the SMAS, or the standard, the default sound that ships with the Pimax Crystal Light as default. It works very much on the same principle as something like the Quest 2 or 3. That is, the sound comes through slits The sound is adequate, it does its job, but it's not as good, nowhere near as good as the DMAS option, which is an upgrade option. It will cost you about 100 US to get the DMAS, and that offers over-ear sound, far more in-depth, far more almost 3D spatial effect, and certainly makes a big difference. But for the average flight simmer, you'll probably find the SMAS sound is quite satisfactory. It just doesn't have that depth that perhaps some of you may be looking for. In terms of performance, I'm running at 90 Hertz. I am locked to half the refresh rate, so I'm getting a pretty rock solid 45 FPS. Very happy with that, very smooth. I hope that comes through on the video, but in the headset I'm not experiencing any micro stutters, pauses, or anything of that nature. Do I recommend this headset? Yes, I do, without hesitation. This is a great VR headset, and for me it's ideal for people that are into simulation, things like that. And for me and my DOF H3 with my motion compensation on in VR, well, it's just an experience that's hard to beat. Highly recommended. Well, we'll have a talk a bit more about the performance and settings and what have you once we jump out of sim. But really all I wanted to say here and to demonstrate is that you can get a good performance subject to your CPU and GPU. I don't think you'd need a 4090 to get a very good performance. It could be something considerably less than that. Your image is not compressed as it may be in something like the Quest, etc. So you're getting the best performance, and if you want to enhance it, you've got adjustments to your resolution you can make, and you've got the fixed foveated rendering. It doesn't have eye tracking, but quite frankly, eye tracking, it may be useful in a very fast-paced environment or simulation, but in something like Microsoft Flight Simulator, well, I'm not sure about the benefit of it. It probably adds more load to the system than any benefit that it may bring. Now, I accept that may be different with something like DCS, but that's my personal view. Anyway, let's have a look at what you get with the headset and discuss other aspects of the Pimax Crystal Light.
For basic configuration, the Pimax Crystal Light uses the same software as the Pimax Crystal. It's Pimax Play. The connection is rock solid and it connected every single time, no problems. Pimax, of course, is Steam compatible, but I'm not using Steam and all the associated luggage that comes with Steam VR. I'm using Pimax XR, so taking advantage of the Open XR variant for the Pimax headset. Performance all round is improved. Let's have a quick look at the device settings, and one of the strengths of this software is its simplicity. Headset can run at 120, 90, which is what I'm using, or 72 Hz. There's also a 60 Hz option coming in the future, I believe, still under development. IPD is set manually on the headset. I have a fairly narrow IPD at just about 60 mm. You can save relevant configurations for specific games or applications if desired. Resolution can be set at maximum, balanced or minimum. Note the step down in resolution from balanced to minimum is substantial, or alternatively you can customize it yourself directly. You have a number of options with regards to fixed foveated rendering. You also have the option to lock to half the frame rate. In my case, I chose the 90 Hz or 90 FPS option, so it locked it at 45 FPS. Worked for me. I haven't tried smart smoothing, it wasn't working well on the Pimax Crystal. There are a number of other settings available under the Games tab, but I haven't played with those. During the initial install, you get the option to update the software, the headset, and the controllers. Make sure you do that before continuing. Under the Advanced tab, this is where you can set how aggressive or otherwise you want the local dimming to be. You can turn it off completely, balanced, as that was the setting I used, highlighted, or extreme. You can also enable the double tap here for entering the pass-through or see-through mode on the headset. The Pimax Crystal Light arrives very suitably packed. Please note that the crystal light supplied to me by Pimax was for review purposes. My thoughts, opinions, and conclusions remain independent. And being a PC VR only headset, comes with a good amount of cable, about 4.5 meters in length overall, with the expected connections, the USB 3 and DisplayPort 1.4. The headset comes with a separate power adapter, with a range of connections to fit most parts of the world, and the power fits now to an inline link box, so no messing around with a separate device or anything like that. DisplayPort and USB on one side, cable going to the headset and power on the other. It's simple, neat and effective. As mentioned earlier, my version came with controllers. They're the standard fare as per the Pimax Crystal itself, with 2 USB cables for charging. Tracking of the controllers was fine. Of course, you get the obligatory quick start guides, etc., but the setup is so simple and straightforward, it's fairly intuitive. The headset, despite its size, is surprisingly light and comfortable, and one thing I should have mentioned is when I was using the headset, I was wearing my glasses, no problems there in any shape or form. I think it's worthwhile just having a quick look at the SMAS sound. This is them here. The sound supplied by this system is functional and basic, but I do recommend the DMAS over-ear for better sound quality. The headset itself is surprisingly comfortable, well padded, and the notable addition of a much thicker top strap I think has played a big part in the comfort of the headset overall. And we can see this highlighted when I compare it to my Pimax Crystal side by side. The housing for the Pimax Crystal Light is exactly the same as that used by the Pimax Crystal. Whilst the headset itself could have been made smaller, I assume they maintained the same shape and form from a cost perspective, with the tooling costs having already been invested in. Although I note interestingly the Crystal Super, due out later this year, will have a form factor 30% smaller. During the 10 hours or so that I've spent in the Pimax Crystal Light, I mentioned earlier that I was using glasses and that I found it very comfortable. Just for clarity, that was using the default 11mm foam face pad. There is an optional 15mm one available. The Crystal Light is overall the most comfortable VR Pimax headset that I've ever worn, as I've always struggled with the weight side of things. This headset is still front heavy to some degree, but for me not to a point where it becomes a major consideration. Yes, the form factor is fairly large, and you can't help drawing a comparison to a hammerhead shark when wearing the headset, but it looks far more uncomfortable and heavier than it actually is. In summary and in conclusion, the Pimax Crystal Light is a very good headset and a solid contender to replace the likes of the HP Reverb G2 and the Valve Index as the de facto standard for simulation. And to some degree this was very evident at the recently held FS Expo, where Carol and her team were kept very busy demoing the Crystal Light and had a lot of very positive feedback. From me personally, it gets a solid recommendation. Well, my voice is about to go again, so thank you as always for joining me today. I hope you found it useful and informative. Stay well, see you soon, and bye for now.